Okay, we're going to get started. Okay, good evening, everyone. This is a meeting of the Special Education Advisory Council for the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, September 12th, 2003, and it's the first SEAC of this school year. You'll see that I am at this point chairing. Unfortunately, we have regrets from our chair and our vice chair this evening. I open the floor to anyone who may wish to chair. However, in the absence of a volunteer, I'm happy to take on that role this evening. Oh, shocking, I don't have volunteers. But welcome, everyone, and we're so pleased that you're joining us this evening, both online and in the room. Before we get to our roll call and agenda, I'm going to invite Director Ennis to give a few words of welcome.
Thank you so much, Superintendent Ruddock, and good evening, everyone. It's so good to be with you again at the start of another school year, an exciting year, a year in which we're going to be supporting all our students. And particular focus in this meeting is our students with special education needs. And I just want to say thanks, first and foremost, to Superintendent, now Chair Ruddock, for for all the great work that she has done throughout the years to support our students with special education needs. And certainly she keeps us apprised of what is happening in the committee and throughout the board. I want to say a big thanks to, of course, our trustees who are represented on the on SEAC, Trustee Ahmed, Trustee Baxter, Trustee Bryden, and Trustee Oliver. I want to thank them for their advocacy and for the work that they do. I also want to say a big thanks to all the associations that are represented here. The Association for Bright Children, Kate and Sarika, the Center for Diverse Learners, Allison and Diane, Community Living, Evelyn, Community Living Burlington, Nadia, Easter Seal Society, Melissa and Sarah, Halton Down Syndrome Association, Sophia, Voice for Children who are deaf and hard of hearing, Kathy and Aaron, and all the members at large. I want to say thank you for your dedication, for your commitment, and for the work that you do. The Halton District School Board certainly takes this very seriously, our commitment to our students with unique and diverse needs. And that is one of the things that we are committed to. All of the commitments that we have in our multi-year plan applies equally and more importantly to our students with special education need. And so we know that the data tells us that we need to do more and we can do more. And that is our commitment through the leadership of our Superintendent Ruddock and all the entire senior team and our Board of Trustees. We endeavor to do just that in this coming school year. So we want to thank you for your support, for your partnership, and for the way that we have worked collaboratively over the years. And we look forward to that ongoing work this year that will make a difference in the lives of all of our students, particularly those with special education needs. So thank you once again, and I look forward to a great year and a great partnership with you.
Thank you, Director Ennis. I'd like to thank also Chair Brindle for giving me her script for chairing this meeting this evening, and so I'm going to resume with that. So in accordance with the Ontario Regulation 46397 and the guidelines effective February 1st, 2001, HDSB promotes community engagement and participation by having processes in place for members of the public to ask questions. A Google form was attached to the agenda distributed in advance of the meeting and is also posted on the HDSB SEAC website page. Questions posed during the live stream meetings of SEAC may be answered during that meeting, particularly those related to the agenda items, or at the following meeting at the discretion of the chair. For efficiency, multiple questions received that are similar in nature may be grouped together at the discretion of the chair or the vice chair. Questions will not be attributed, and a notation will be made that multiple people asked the same question, and any questions that contain language that is hateful or discriminatory will not be considered. And with that, we will start with a roll call of who is in attendance. So please answer yes or present. Trustee Ahmed.
I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Baxter.
Good evening, everyone.
Trustee Broaden.
Good evening.
And Trustee Oliver. With the Association for Bright Children, Kate Lombacher.
Present.
And Sarika Kinita. For the Center for Diverse Learners, we have regrets from Allison Brindle, Diane Vanden Bosch. With Community Living North Halton, Evelyn Bursey.
Present.
With Community Living Burlington, Nadia Torek. With the Easter Seals, Melissa Dockeray.
Present.
Sarah Lansley.
Present.
With the Halton Down Syndrome Association, Sophia Siddiqui.
Hi there.
With the Voice for Children, Kathy Turner.
Present.
And Aaron Spruill.
Oh, present. Aaron's here.
And our members at large, Kasia Klassen.
Hi there, present.
And Katie Schleifer has sent her regrets. And Melissa Summer. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. And here with us this evening from staff.
Hello, I'm Conan Spruan, Principal of Special Education Services.
I'm Christine Howard. I'm a manager of professional services with special education.
Riley Watson. I'm an instructional program leader with Special Education Services.
I'm Sarah Cronin. I'm an instructional program lead with Special Education Services.
Marta Zamet, acting as SEAC administrator for tonight.
And at the back of the room, we have Audrey Dresma, who's also presenting this evening, and we may welcome some guests in our gallery this evening as well. To honor the land, Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of the many First Nations and Métis, from the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis. These lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. Before we get to approving the agenda, I would like to say thank you for being a part of SEAC again this school year. I know this is still the first year of your term, but it is definitely a time of renewal for all of us as we start up another school year, and I'm very excited to be back here virtually and in person with all of you. And I know that we've got great work ahead of us, so I look forward to that work. To approve tonight's agenda for the meeting, are there any modifications or amendments that need to be made to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone that would like to move to motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Baxter? And anyone to second? Kate, thank you. Is there any opposition to the agenda as it stands? Okay, so seeing none, the agenda is approved unanimously. And next is to approve the meeting minutes for June 6th, 2003. Are there any errors or omissions? Okay, would anyone like to make a motion or move a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Trustee Baxter. And would anyone like to second that motion? Anyone perhaps virtually that would like to? Trustee Ahmed. Thank you.
I do second.
Okay, is there any opposition to the minutes as recorded? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved unanimously. All right, and now we'll move on to the action items. And I'm pleased to welcome Sarah Cronin and Riley Watson, who are going to do a presentation on our gifted learners in HDSB and how we support our staff, our students, and parents. Sorry for the, oh, there we go. I was going to say, sorry, those for in the meet, or we're just getting ourselves online here.
So good evening, everyone. So my colleague and I, Riley Watson, we're going to present supporting gifted learners. So Riley is going to begin, and he'll do the first half of the presentation, and I'll pick up halfway through.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'm happy to be here. Understanding and supporting the gifted learning profile in Halton. What is giftedness? Giftedness, an unusually advanced degree of general intellectual ability that requires differentiated learning experiences of a depth and breadth beyond those normally provided in the regular school program to satisfy the level of educational potential indicated. That's from the Ministry of Education. Lots of myths out there about our gifted learners. There are many surrounding. These myths contain and exist among educators, parents, siblings, paraprofessionals, peers, and outside resources. Common myths surrounding the gifted students are they are aloof, proud of their own abilities, and care little for others. They all enjoy independent work and are all motivated to complete projects. They're all good students and rarely struggle to emotionally regulate. They have a general intellectual ability that makes them gifted in all school subjects. They are better adjusted, more popular, and happier than average children. Gifted students do not receive special education services, and a gifted student cannot be gifted and have a learning disability. And those are just a few of those myths out there, and thank you. And also, it's the complexity of our gifted learner profiles. We kind of have 5 that we'll go through, and we understand that no student is ever just in one kind of profile. We have the engaged gifted learner, seen as a high achiever, seeks teacher approval and guidance, perhaps non-risk-taking, does well academically, they're very dependent, and accepts and conforms. Also, we have actively engaged gifted learner profile, perhaps corrects the teacher, questions rules and policies, demonstrates inconsistent work habits, difficulty waiting, is creative, competitive, perhaps sometimes seen as challenging. Disengaged learner profile has intermittent attendance, doesn't complete tasks, spaced out, perhaps isolates themselves, is self-abusive, seems average or below, criticizes self and others. We have the under the radar gifted profile, maybe denies the talent, drops out of gifted or advanced classes, resists challenges, wants to belong socially, changes friends. Strategies involve allowing students to make choice to opt out of gifted opportunities, And then the fifth one is the twice exceptional, may demonstrate inconsistent grades, struggles with executive functioning, particularly organization, may struggle with focus, may struggle with physical production of schoolwork, and has an additional diagnosis such as ADHD, learning disability, or autism spectrum disorder. Very important is the mental wellness and the gifted learner. The gifted brain results in greater intensity, sensitivity, idealism, perfectionism, activity, and nonconformity. The traits associated with giftedness, while depression, anxiety, and self-defeating behaviors are universal, giftedness poses specific challenges that bring with it several risk factors for emotional distress. Gifted children and adults are not more prone to psychological problems. Rather, emotional distress among gifted individuals may be precipitated, heightened, or modified by some of these gifted traits. Perfectionism, overthinking, isolation, underachievement, asynchronous development, oversensitivity, and emotional overexcitability, existential depression. And I will now pass it on to my colleague, Sarah.
So we have some instructional approaches for our gifted learners. We use universal design for learning, differentiated instruction and assessment, providing students agency into their learning journey, allowing time to follow their passion, flexible adjustments to lessons and or materials, readiness grouping, programming with information that is both intellectually stimulating and age appropriate, supporting student intensity through guidance and facilitation. So one of the biggest questions we get is, what is differentiation? The definition is there's two different ways we can do it, instruction and assessment, and we can differentiate these two things through content, the specific information that is to be taught in the lessons or the unit or the course of instruction, through the process, how the student will acquire the content information, through product, how the student will demonstrate understanding of the content, and through the learning environment, the environment where learning is taking place, including physical location and or student grouping. Some of the strategies that we use in differentiation include creating tiered assignments, curriculum compacting, open-ended assignments, inquiry projects or project-based learning, anchor activities, choice boards or choice menus, cubing, think docs, tic-tac-toe boards, rafts, learning centers, choice in assessment and evaluation products, process, and in environment. We wanted to highlight some of the placement options that we have here. So first being regular class with resource assistance, familiarity, stability, and security of staying with a familiar group is something that the regular classroom environment offers. Opportunities for extended enrichment activities that meet the students' learning needs, inquiry-based learning, support and access to contests in a variety of subject areas, such as writing and math and science, and there's connections to real-world applications there. In a self-contained class, gifted students would have the opportunity to work with students who share similar learning styles or profiles, and whom sometimes experience similar challenges and frustrations in a regular classroom. They have the opportunity to focus on executive functioning and social skills, and they have the opportunity to have support in building these skills and to integrate social emotional skills learning throughout their entire program. In secondary, we have a secondary gifted cluster. In this cluster, there are opportunities for extended enrichment activities that meet the students' learning needs. There's support and access to contests in a variety of subject areas like writing, math, and science, curriculum compacting, access to grade level curriculum, and these classes are credit bearing, of course. So HDSB supports teachers of gifted learners in a variety of different ways. So supporting CERTs in the classroom and our teachers, our classroom teachers, and our secondary gifted clustered leads. We do this in a multitude of ways, including educational collaboration and integration. So collaborating with HDSB service departments and all stakeholders. So that could look like collaborating with our mental health department, our school programs department, our Indigenous rights and education and equity departments. It can look like support for transition from grade 8 to grade 9 as well. We offer professional development and resources to our CERTs and our teachers. And so this is continuous learning and access to resources for educators that are tailored specifically to gifted education. That can look like teacher networking and access to curated resources. It can look like we are in process of developing a guide to understanding gifted education, and that's currently in development for grades 1 through 12. It can look like IPLs working in schools with gifted school teams in supporting their understanding of the gifted learner profile. And we also offer gifted learner profile understanding, so support in writing quality IEPs for gifted learners, and again, IPLs supporting the schools and their gifted teams. So here are some examples of past gifted networking topics. They include understanding twice exceptional learners, they include social problem solving as it relates to the gifted learner profile, understanding mental health needs and supports for the gifted learner profile, and executive functioning needs and strategies to support the gifted learner profile. Here are some supports that we offer for our parents as well. They're linked here, but we have our board website specific to special education that outlines our programs and placements and some of our processes there. We have our working together document in special education that outlines our processes. We have a gifted screening timeline that is linked to our public website as well. We have parent information for elementary gifted placement. So at the elementary level, when parents are making the decision as to which placement they want, this is a presentation that is shared with them and explained to them so that they can have some support in making that decision. There's parent information, school visits for self-contained classes for those who choose to go that direction. There's, of course, our Association for Bright Children, our Halton chapter, and the National Association for Gifted Children as well. So thank you for your time tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah and Riley, and we're happy to open it up to the floor for any questions or comments.
Hi. So we're hoping to kind of do a response and a summary of our concerns in likely November. But overall, I think the thing that we find or what we hear from parents at the moment in HGSB with gifted learners is a feeling of concern, particularly around self-contained and feeling discouraged from self-contained. I know that my family was actively discouraged from pursuing a self-contained placement for both of our kids. And one of the things I didn't see in the presentation emphasized was the social benefit of gifted learners being with one another. It did touch on, having similar learning styles and so on, but there is a feeling of belonging and normalness that comes from putting gifted learners together that is incredibly difficult to replicate in any other way other than these children having access to one another, brains that think the way that their brains think. We talk about sort of the mental health needs and sort of the intensity and social emotional needs of these kids. A lot of that comes from understanding that they are different. These are bright children. They know that they don't think the way that their peers think a lot of the time in the classroom. Sometimes they don't think the way their teachers think. They see themselves as separate from their peers in their classroom, from the teachers that they're interacting with, and having the opportunity to connect with minds that work a little bit more like their minds work can do amazing things for making these kids feel like they have a place in the world. And as we've seen discouragement from that opportunity we feel is lost for some of these kids. And in particular, isolating the self-contained placements to the children with the most intense needs means that we get classrooms with a very large number of often twice exceptional children. I'm not sure what the current status is because I haven't been able to get the information, but the impression I'm being given is it's highly male because and the problem is once a classroom becomes very gender unbalanced, you're not going to correct that because the girls are going to see there's no girls in the class and they're not going to want to attend. And it becomes a self-fulfilling situation. And that is making for some very intense classrooms for some of these children. And it's working again to actively discourage parents from participating in the option of self-contained where it might greatly benefit their child's well-being, their social well-being. And many of the parents feel unsupported in that and feel that they can't get what they want to get out of a placement that puts their children with other children that make them feel like they belong and are supported. And in the primary in particular, where I think the enrollment is the lowest among self-contained classes is the earliest grades. And I'll pull my personal experience. That was when my kids were the most different from their peers. That was when their math was 3 or 4 grades ahead. Their reading was 6 or 7 grades ahead. They wanted to read middle school novels in senior kindergarten. They literally weren't allowed to. They were not allowed to take the books out of the library. They weren't allowed to get assessed for reading levels at the grade that they were in. That was when their needs were the most intense, and that's sort of when there's the least opportunity for a lot of these kids, that their need is actually incredibly intense at the lower grades compared to some of the higher grades where they have more social skills, more experience, more emotional regulation often than they have when they're really young. And yet it seems like there's the least identification and support going on in those earliest grades. And that's when the families feel the most pressured, the kids feel the most dysregulated and out of place. So I expect we would like to sort of follow up further in the months to come, but there are some really serious concerns in the parent community, especially in those primary grades, about whether the kids are having those needs met, and in particular those social needs met with the current way that placement takes place and with the current structure of the self-contained classrooms for primary. Thanks.
Thanks, Kate. We look forward to that presentation. Are there any other comments or questions? Trustee Baxter.
I just had a question about teacher training and resources. You were speaking to the various resources that are available for the non-self-contained classrooms. So are all teachers or all teachers in the board receiving training, or do they receive training if there's a student with an IEP with a giftedness identification, or how does that work in terms of teacher training?
Thank you for your question. So we offer training to all teachers that are supporting gifted learners. Secondary, elementary, mainstream, self-contained, all of them. I should mention too the CERTs that also support them as well.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Sarah and Riley. And at this time, we'll go on to item 2.2, which is another staff presentation on the structured learning class. And we invite Christine Howard, the manager of our speech and language pathologists, behavior analysts, and occupational therapist. Her job seems to be growing. And we also have one of our instructional program leaders, Audrey Drazma. And they're just going to take a moment to, oh, that was quick, get flipped into the meet.
Hello. Thank you for inviting us here tonight. As Colette said, I'm Christine Howard. I'm one of the managers of professional services, and with me is my colleague Audrey Dreisma.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us present tonight. I just a little bit of a disclosure. I also happen to have an autism diagnosis, level 1. This will be the learning profile that we'll be talking about tonight. So it's something that was near and dear to my heart. And we look forward to sharing with you more about the structured learning class pilot.
So on the agenda of what we will speak about tonight, we've already done our introduction. So then a little bit of background on the reason behind the class, the intent and the rationale, the selection criteria for the students that were chosen, as well as the application process, the location of the sites, just the fact that it was a 2-year pilot program and that was planned and programmed for in advance, the process of integration of the students in the program, and then next steps for their reintegration post-pilot, some parent feedback that we received that we gathered through surveys, what we learned through the process, what we plan to do to support level 1 ASD students moving forward, and then any questions and answers from you.
We chose this visual because we thought it would help frame the presentation. And so, because you've probably seen a variation of this particular comment before, but certainly we're definitely talking about how our students felt in social situations. So the structured learning class pilot. Okay. So can you hear me all right? Okay, sorry. So the structured learning class pilot. This was a 2-year pilot program, and it began in September of 2021, and it ended in June 2023. We did it in the form of an application process where we system-wide, we asked schools to be looking at the following learner profile. The learner profile we were looking for students that were at least in their that they had to be in grade 4 or grade 5 to start. And then in their final year, the second year of the pilot, they'd be in grades 5 and 6 as they returned to their home school. They needed to be working on Ontario curriculum. We did allow some sort of modification, but certainly not significant modification that would make us wonder if perhaps Ontario curriculum wasn't going to be the pathway moving forward. They needed to have an autism diagnosis. We're going to be speaking more about what level 1 means as it pertains to the diagnostic criteria. We also had some students that had other identifications as well, or diagnoses in terms of mental health, such as anxiety. And the biggest crux was that we were really looking for kids that possessed metacognitive skills. So what that meant was they had to have good oral language skills. They were not acquiring language. They were able to use language in order to learn. And so initially we had 15 students across the 3 sites. By the end, we had finished with 16 students, and you're probably wondering how that happened. But during the first year, we had a student leave, and then we had a couple more students join. So that is why we ended up with 16 at the end of the pilot. So the goals of the structured learning class was that we were hoping that students would leave with a better understanding of their learner profile so that they could effectively self-advocate their strengths and needs. We wanted them to be able to develop the social communication and social problem-solving skills so they could regulate better in order to navigate the social world. And we were hoping then that this would provide them with the skills to be successful upon the return to the regular classroom, because the whole goal was to give them the tools that they needed in order to be more effective social communicators once they returned back to the classroom setting. And in order to achieve this, the programming was based on Michelle Garcia Winner's social thinking methodology, which we're going to talk about in a few more minutes.
So in order to make the program accessible by all the areas of the board, we did have one class. Oh, sorry, I didn't push this through. We did have one class location in each area of the board. So in the Burlington area, we had it at Alexander's. In the North area in Milton, we had it at PL Robertson. And in the Oakville area, we had it at Heritage Glen. In the class, there were 6 students per class because it specifically was a class aimed at students with an autism diagnosis. As per the ministry regulations around classes for students with autism, it had a maximum of 6. And for students who required transportation and met the criteria, transportation was also provided to the program. The structured learning class team, of course, parents were our number one partner and did a lot of advocating for us and contributing to goals and things like that. In the class was a full-time teacher who had their special education part 1. A speech and language pathologist was involved in the classroom 1 day a week to support the students and to partner with the teacher and the communication disorders assistant. A communicative disorders assistant was assigned to the class on a full-time basis as well. The communicative disorders assistant is a new role to the Halton District School Board, and they have training at the undergraduate level as well as at the postgraduate level in college. It's quite a competitive program to get into, and they're specifically trained in the areas of communication disorders to carry out goals in a clinical capacity to support speech and language pathologists. In terms of what we took a look at for getting ready for the class and then ongoing support during the entire pilot. At the beginning, we did a lot of training with all the staff in the team. So everybody was provided both free and paid webinars from the social thinking organization. Time was spent within site teams, so each of the individual schools spent time with each other as the communication disorders assistant, the speech and language pathologist, and the teacher, doing weekly planning and consulting around goals and things like that. And then we also got the whole pilot teams together, so all the schools together. The meetings were also held with the assistant principal, who at the time was Sean Marks, Audrey, the IPL, and myself as the manager. All 3 of us also did site visits, both together and independently, to all of the 3 classes to help problem solve or to support. We provided a lot of resources for the class. We had ongoing meetings, including attendance at SRTs where needed. I myself held biweekly meetings with the speech and language pathologists and the CDAs around the programming and development of PD and things like that. And then as well, Audrey, myself, and Sean also had meetings regarding the class and what was needed there.
So because the whole goal of one of the main goals was to provide them with the tools they needed to better, to be more effective communicators in a regular classroom setting, we replicated a regular classroom setting. And so what we've put here on our slide is just obviously some of the things that all kids would have in a regular classroom setting. They did French. If they were in grade 4, they wrote the CCAT. If they were in grade 6, they wrote EQAO. And so they attended assemblies, they could join clubs, they could join intramurals, and so on.
Sorry, I have 2 screens open, one that has my speaker notes on it, so I apologize. When we speak about autism, I'm not sure how much you're aware of it, but when a qualified practitioner is making a diagnosis of autism, they look at 2 main criteria. One is in the area of social communication and interaction, and the other is in the area of restricted and repetitive behaviors. So in order to meet the criteria for a diagnosis of autism, an individual must have symptoms in both areas, both in the communication and interaction, as well as the restricted and repetitive behaviors areas to be diagnosed. And then for either criteria, there's a severity rating assigned. So it can be 3 levels, and that's what you're seeing here. Level 1 requires some support, level 2 requires substantial report, and level 3 requires very substantial support. Individuals diagnosed with autism could have 1 rating in one of the criteria areas and a different rating in the other criteria area. So, for example, they could have a severity rating of a level 1 in communication and social interaction and a level 2 for restricted and repetitive behaviors. Today, the focus and the one we looked at for the criteria for entry into the class was specifically level 1 autism in the area of communication and social interaction. So the terminology, again, level 1, and it's level 1 autism specifically in social communication and interaction. So again, these had to be students who had the ability to think about their thinking. That's the metacognitive skills that we were speaking of. So they had to be highly verbal with good use of language, no cognitive impairments, and really social and interpersonal interactions and those self-regulations and those abilities to navigate situations that are changing rapidly and that are constantly changing are the biggest challenges for these students. Social thinking methodology was, as Audrey was saying, developed by a speech and language pathologist named Michelle Garcia-Winner, and it's specifically aimed at these level 1 autism students, but not only autism students, it's also for a broader range of individuals, including individuals with ADHD or possible LDs, gifted students, for example. And it specifically is language-based. That's why the kids have to have very good language and cognitive skills. And it uses a variety of methods to make very complex concepts teachable to students because social interactions, again, are very complex.
So some of the characteristics of the level 1 autism learner, and again, recognizing it's a spectrum, so it's not to say that all people, including myself, with a level 1 autism diagnosis demonstrate all of these things the same way, in the same intensity, and so on. But when we look at things for the emotional sensitivity, and obviously the social difficulties, I'm not going to read the list. You're able to read the list. I guess what I wanted to emphasize was the second point, which is one of our focus for picking this age group. By the time they reach grade 4, and they're very aware that they are making mistakes socially, just that unfortunately they don't understand why are we making these mistakes. And so that can cause feelings of isolation, and then that can make one anxious, and then certainly forming depression in that. And so certainly we don't want to have kids that have that continue and then perhaps it become more of a clinical diagnosis. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is that, as I say to people, for this level of autism learner, you're talking about that social is where they're really falling down. That's where they're really that's where you're really going to notice the issues. And we put in a slide here about level 1 autism and how it's different for girls. And it truly is. You get the your PDF copy, you'll see the research links. But we put that in there because we had 2 female students as part of the 16 that were in our pilot.
Some of the challenges that students with level 1 autism have is around that theory of mind, that idea that I have a mind and you have a mind, and I can know what's in your mind, and I know that it's different from what my mind might be thinking. I have to have different perspectives of what you might be thinking, and then use that to think about what you might be thinking, think about what I might be thinking, how those are different, and how those might cause you to form an opinion about me, or have some thoughts about me. And then again, with that social emotional regulation is another area where they struggle. They often have limited repertoires. And as Audrey was saying, in the traits of the level 1 autism learners, they do have a hard time sometimes identifying the feelings within their own bodies. And then if they also have a limited repertoire of emotional language, for example, they're not able then to properly associate the feelings in their body to those emotional characteristics to understand how best to act. But they also then have a hard time understanding, yes, the physical sensations they're feeling in their body and identifying those properly, and then associating those with, again, emotion, then coming up with the right strategy to deal with those emotions.
So one of the renowned experts in the autism field is Peter Vermeulen out of Belgium, and he wrote a book called Context Blindness, and he was the first to reference that term. And basically the idea that sort of context is everything. And so what he basically had found through research is that those on the spectrum can have difficulty responding to those multiple pieces of information at the same time. Sensorially, auditorily, demands, requests, as well as whatever object you might have in your hand that you're trying to do, like say photocopying, and someone meanwhile is trying to talk to you and your cell phone's ringing and things like that. And basically what he said was the brain makes guesses, and it's based on context, and the context will impact your social interaction and your flexibility and thoughts. If you have, going back to the previous slide that Christine was talking about, if you have a limited repertoire of certainly world experiences, and then you have limited coping strategies, you're probably going to perhaps make incorrect guesses about what it is that's going on in your surroundings. So that leads us in terms of, so let's talk about more concretely, why and when is social cognition important? Well, It's everywhere. Everything that we do is social, including, and it's not just about making friends, it's when we're sharing space with people. So, for example, even coming back from COVID, we all had to learn how to share space again. And for some, they're still learning how to share space. But even when we're alone, we're thinking about other people and about previous or future interactions. And so what I just want to give you an example. I want you to think about a time where you were by yourself and you did something completely silly that, you know, you were just like, and then maybe you even said out loud, I'm so glad nobody saw that. If you ever had that experience, that means you're a social thinker. Because embarrassment is a social feeling. You can't be embarrassed if it's just you or you're just thinking about yourself. But even that last point about driving in traffic, it isn't just about you being able to drive, but you have to anticipate what other people are going to be doing, or else you'd be in a lot of accidents, not even necessarily because of something you did, but because you were not actually aware that other people don't think like you, and you could actually get into a situation that will get you into an accident.
As Audrey was referencing before, because context is everything, social thinking methodology and the social thinking programming is not a behavioral approach to treating social cognition skills. We're trying to teach sort of the why behind that behavior and help people. It is a very neurodiversity affirming program because it allows people to have techniques and strategies to make sense of social situations that they're in the context and to try to interpret those in dynamic and fluid situations. But it isn't just, somebody burps and you say, excuse me. It's not a straight behavioral approach. Social situations are very complex with a number of factors and, again, very context dependent. So, for example, at the bottom, you see a picture of that cake. And obviously the person who took that order took that very literally. And that's what a lot of our kids, so, the message was, happy birthday from Mark, spell it with a C, and they wrote with a C underneath it. That is what happens with a lot of our students with autism, is that they interpret things very literally, or they're not sure how to make those smart guesses in situations. And then they have a difficulty doing that social navigation and regulation. Some of the social competencies that are required to be successful in the social world these are some of the things we've already been saying. So that ability to attend accurately to information, to interpret that information very quickly and fluidly, to make the correct meaning, to help then problem solve in the moment very quickly, make that connection, and then decide what the correct response might be, and then to come up with those social responses that will lead to the outcomes that students are desiring, whether that's the right thoughts from another person, the desire for other people to be in social situations with them.
So I'm going to give an example about that. Even just this evening, I was not attending correctly to this room. I walked in and I immediately went and interpreted and went to the back of the room. And then it was only after I realized that my colleagues were sitting in a different area. Still practicing my social thinking, but the whole crux of it is we attend to interpret, to problem solve, to respond. And so when we start doing a lot of our groundwork with the social thinking concepts that Christine's going to be talking about, or that I will be talking about, we start off with thoughts and feelings, and we do that because we need to start working on attending skills. You can't start going to problem solving and responding if we're not attending correctly. So the structured learning pilot was a 2-year pilot, and in the first year we were working on the social thinking methodology, and it consists of 10 core concepts. We had to teach them in order. And then while we were doing that, as well as the regular curriculum that all the students were doing, we were also working towards integration opportunities within that site so that perhaps they could go and join, say, their grade 4 peers in a gym class and perhaps start demonstrating some of the skills that they were learning through the social thinking methodology. And then in year 2, we sort of call it a transitional year. We were continuing to have them acquire and consolidate social thinking concepts, but we were also beginning that supported reintegration back to the receiving school, because that was the ultimate goal. And so, as we were saying before, the programming, they were working on Ontario curriculum, the social thinking methodology. They wrote the CCAT or the EQAO as applicable. They took French. They also had an alternate program area on their IEP called social communication, and it was in there that we were able to embed those very individualized goals that each of the students were working on. And they were we also built in opportunities throughout the day so that they could practice, if you will. So I guess what we're trying to say is that it's not like we stopped and we said, okay, right now we're doing social thinking, and then we're not going to talk about it anymore for the rest of the day because now we're going to do math or something like that. It was embedded throughout the day. That was the goal.
So here are the social thinking 10 core concepts. So again, I don't have any intention to go into these in depth. So if you're interested in these, they're available. There's a lot of information available on them on the social thinking website. But you can see that, again, as Audrey was saying, they are concepts that we are trying to break down very complex processes of social things that happen very quickly and naturally for neurotypical individuals that have a more difficult time for people who are neurodivergent. And so they really build on each other. And really the intention is to make some of those unwritten rules much more clear, really help people to think through. And then they're able to make their own decisions about what kinds of actions and decisions they make. They can still choose to make unexpected behaviors in a situation. They're just aware of what those unexpected behaviors are likely to result in. So again, it's not a straight behavioral approach. It's really trying to help people understand those social contexts. If, for example, you were to walk by one of our classrooms, this is the vocabulary that takes those 10 core concepts and sort of breaks it down again for students. So if you walked by one of our classrooms, you might have heard them talking about moving to the body in the group, or being part of the group plan, and being part of the group. Are we making smart guesses, or are those wacky guesses? Did you make, or having flexible thinking versus stuck thinking, and the idea of thinking with your eyes and sharing an imagination. So these are all the translation of the core concepts into day-to-day vocabulary. We did heavily resource the class. So in addition to all these these resources that you would see if you wanted to go into the social thinking website and see what they entailed, we also provided a number of games and conversation starters so that the students again had the chance to practice their social thinking skills in a variety of settings. And again, we also had some read alouds and some other books that either emphasized social emotional learning or brought in some of our CRRP, our culturally responsive and what's the other R? Relevant pedagogy, so that we were still continuing to target some of the same things that the kids were targeting in their regular classrooms.
So from January to June of this calendar year, we offered professional development to all of the receiving school staff to prepare them for the students' return to their respective receiving school. And then by March break, our goal was that all of the students would have been fully reintegrated back into their receiving school. So we did it individually. We didn't actually say, like, on this specific date at this time, all of the children must be back into their receiving school. We did it sort of that sliding scale, if you will, in terms of comfort level, and some might have needed more visits, et cetera. So we carefully crafted that transition back into their receiving school. So for term 2, then you might be asking, well, then what was the staff doing if all the kids were back in their receiving school? Well, we were on the ground going through, at all of the different sites, making sure that that the receiving school teams had support. If there was, they wanted to do some problem solving, if they wanted some more coaching and modeling. So we were able to help support that at of all of the kids at their respective schools. We also continue to track and measure the application of skills that they were learning. We had been using a metric called the Inventory of Classroom Skills, and we used it as a pre, during, and post metric, just to get a sense as to how the students were doing in terms of some of the skills they were acquiring. And then we also sought parent feedback. And so again, I won't read them all, but it was very pleasing to us to learn that the parents themselves were noticing differences in their child, in their demeanor. So, for example, that they were able to have a discussion about roadblocks, and they were actually able to use the words to be able, instead of say a reaction, a physical reaction, to say this is triggering me, as opposed to perhaps maybe in the past they might have gotten upset and then walked out of the room or something like that. Increased interaction, better ability to realize that other people have feelings, and that was huge for a lot of the kids, was to realize that we're not all thinking the same thing, believe it or not, or we're not all interested in the same thing. And so that was really heartening to hear that even the parents themselves were noticing results in the home. There were parent concerns, so we will address those. Certainly, it hinged around the anxiety about what was going to be the process for helping those students to return to the receiving school. So I think we have to remember, too, we talked earlier about that. For some of our kids, they made social errors, and perhaps they burn those proverbial bridges with their peers from the school in which they left. And so even though they now had more tools to be able to socialize, I think there was this concern about, oh, when they go back, are the other kids going to give them a chance, or, that type of thing. And so there was that. We also had parents that, for a number of reasons, wanted to, there was a desire to continue, have their child stay in the structured learning class setting. So we had to, go back and review the goals, which was, again, to help them, give them the tools they needed to be able to return to regular classroom setting. And then certainly, like the practical, what kind of support would my child receive leaving that safe setting called the structured learning class, and then going back to the receiving school, not just for term 2, but beyond.
So what are some things we learned via the process? So we learned definitely that the social thinking methodology works. So when the methodology and the concepts and the vocabulary are taught consistently, systematically, and applied throughout the day, that students did make an improvement in their social interaction skills and were better able to regulate and navigate in their social world. We knew this already, but we certainly learned that students are complex with an intersectionality of needs. So again, some of them did have those multiple identities, those multiple diagnoses, and then we needed to, find the best way to support all those needs for those students in our classrooms. That training and PD are definitely key in terms of helping the students as well as the staff understand the concepts, because this was all new learning. Definitely, we thought we had the right approach with staffing, so that multidisciplinary approach with the teacher, the speech and language pathologist, the IPL. We brought in, consultants from outside of the board if the kids had other supports and services they were working with, so that we could again meet those intersectional of needs for those students. And then again, we also did know this as well, but again, we can see that there is an application of the social thinking methodology and concepts beyond just students with autism. It's got a broader scope. Social thinking, definitely we learned that they do need to be embedded through all parts, that they need to have real life situations and context to apply them into. And again, I think the other thing that we did learn too is student voice is very important. So getting that sense from the students of whether they are interested in working on their social thinking, whether they see that need and whether they're motivated to make those changes in and of themselves, or whether it was something somebody else thought that they should do. And authenticity is also key. So a lot of the kids in the classes, again, because they do have average cognitive, and they're savvy enough to know when things are being practiced in in faux situations and false contexts, and as opposed to having the chance to really practice those. And in fact, some of the kids also said, wouldn't it be great if I could have had a chance to practice this with one of the kids that they wanted to be friends with back at their home school, instead of we forced them sort of into a context of the social thinking classroom. But the kids really were looking forward to being able to go back to their home schools and apply the things with their friends of choice, I guess is what I would say. So the student voice and authenticity. And then there's greater success, obviously, when the whole school can understand the concepts and help embed those. And again, I think the other thing that we really learned is because it is an intervention model, that authenticity and that integration in the child's home school really is an opportunity that would be best for the students for this model.
So moving forward, now that this school year, all of the students are back in their respective home schools. And so that support from special education services will continue. Part of my portfolio is to go in and help support and Christine, as the manager, also assigned to the autism portfolio, is certainly going to be help. We're going to be working together in order to just monitor their success, provide consultative support to the staff and parents if they're looking for more information or refinement or even like community resources. We offer a menu of service for our staff in our board when it comes to autism. And so not just for those 16 kids that were in the structured learning class, but for kids on the spectrum, we have some PD opportunities that happen. We have resources that we have collected and placed not just in text format, but also on two internal websites that contain a variety of resources that are ASD kindergarten, ASD grades 1 to 12, and we offer consultation, coaching, modeling opportunities, and certainly we're looking at continuing embedding social thinking methodology within the curriculum, not just in elementary, but in secondary. And then, like I said, we also are re-emphasizing that problem-solving pathway that, schools themselves, if they're needing help and support for that level 1 autism learner, or student with autism, they can then go through their SRT process and then consult with the speech and language pathologist, because several of our speech and language pathologists in our board have social thinking training. And then what we've done is, again, you'll have access to these links, but if you're wanting more information on social thinking, we've provided you with the research article as well as a webinar, and then of course the social thinking website.
I just wanted to add too of note, so the communication disorders assistant that were in the classroom, they remain as a role within Halton District School Board. They're not being used currently right now to support specifically level 1 students, but they are being used to support students across the board, many of whom who have autism. So they're still I'm very excited about that role being used in our system to support a variety of learners.
And we are now open for questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine and Audrey. And so I open up the floor for any questions or comments. Kate, go ahead.
Always have something to say. Thank you. That was wonderful. I have a few things that I think you sort of hinted at the connection I want to make. So one was the fact that the kids are in basically a self-contained placement, and they obviously self-identified that had both comforting aspects to them that made them feel safe because they were in an environment of people who thought similarly to how they thought, and they also identified that it was not allowing them to practice the way that they wanted. So are you looking to move forward at all with that kind of self-contained model, or are you really looking more to do more of an integrated in-class model instead, where they have the opportunity to proceed in the classroom? Is there a part, I'm looking at that sort of the safety and the self-contained part, that they allowed some of them that were concerned or had probably fears in their homeschool, it sounded like, because things had gotten difficult for them. Are there still opportunities to kind of set off that relief valve for some of those kids that are really struggling in their home classes to take a step back? Because it seemed like that probably allowed some of them to have an emotional reset that might have contributed to effectiveness. Like, will there be any opportunity to think of strategies for those kids who have burnt some bridges in their classes, or might need that kind of specialized placement? Or we're thinking this is the pilot, and then that we're not going to proceed with that kind of self-contained.
Okay, so just to answer some of your questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Conan and Colette. So the pilot has ended formally, but we're continuing to monitor their progress this year. That's one of the things that's in my portfolio to oversee. But what you're talking about is that, I could liken everything that you just said about, burning bridges or fear or comfort or safety and all of those things to all of our students in terms of what is it that we do to help allay fears, that whole student learner, right? So what I'm saying is that that's why I go back to our problem solving pathway, which means that perhaps we do need to go to a school resource team meeting and we need to see if our child youth counselor can be of help. Again, looking at programming, looking at, I would say almost every school, I don't want to say all the schools have a calming area, in terms of, to be able to reset. We certainly have our wellness department that's there that we can access in terms of helping to allay any of those concerns that our students are demonstrating. So beyond academic. So I guess what I'm saying is that the pilot has ended and we've learned a lot, but I think what we have to go back to is the main goal of that pilot, which was what can we do to give them the tools so that they can go back to the regular classroom and be more effective. So from that, we're going to continue to do that, but we're going to be doing it within classrooms embedded so that, we don't have to take them out to put them back in.
Right.
But I'm going to turn over to Conan and Colette.
Yes, and to just kind of reiterate what Audrey said, that the pilot has come to a close. It was a firm 2-year pilot. Thinking of our special education plan and the foundation upon which it's built, which is inclusion and supporting the needs of the learner within the regular classroom to the extent possible. And only exploring self-contained placements when those needs can't be met within that environment. So really looking at how do we support the learner in the regular classroom, and this will be the work of Audrey and Christine and the team to ensure that the needs of our ASD Level 1 students are met in the classroom. But I also, want to say that it really wasn't a scalable initiative. In that we heard from Superintendent Ngoy in the spring around our budget challenges, $17 million overspent in special education. We weren't able to even consider the financial implications of scaling a self-contained program like this. So for a range of reasons, it halted. Yeah.
I understand. So the other thing I would like to know.
Can I put you back on the speakers list? Because there's actually a couple of people that want to speak.
Yeah.
So can I come
Go
back
ahead.
to you? While the iron's hot here, I'm going to go to the folks in the virtual meet. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Kasha?
It's Kaisa, but you're close, so that's okay. No worries. I was curious about that. I'm going to turn on my camera for a sec. Just around, preparing the classroom that the students were returning to, and if there was any thought given to that. You talked about making them more effective in the classroom for when they return, but what about making the classroom more effective for them upon their return, and looking at the other students that were going to be welcoming them back, and talk about inclusion and empathy and compassion and ensuring that they were reaching out so that classroom environment, not just looking at the individual and their skill set, but the environment that they were coming back to, and ensuring that it was going to be opportunities for them to reconnect. So I was just curious to know if that was part of the pilot. It sounds like certainly moving forward that will be integrated, but I was wondering if you could speak to that.
Well, certainly the professional development opportunity when we pulled all of the staff from the respective receiving schools to attend a full day of in-service. That's where it started. So we gave them that background of what social thinking methodology is, what the students were working on, the goals, what we learned, etc. And so then that was that start of that preparation so that the schools could prepare. And then, as you say, go back into that. So how are we, how does that affect the, like you said, the inclusivity in the classroom and so on. So it's not something that all we could do is bring them the PD, but we know that the good people that were attending were going to do everything that they could to make sure that all of the students were aware. And to your point, we were also hoping that they would also start to use some of the vocabulary, some of the core concepts, et cetera, or some of the resources. In fact, we had quite a number of people that were interested in in actually looking, not just looking at the resources, but could they actually have a little bit more in depth on how to use those resources so that they could then implement them in the classroom. And that has certainly established a comfort level for that student, because they could go in and say, oh, we're hearing the same words, and I'm actually able to, say the same things that I was doing in this other class. And so that's something that we tried to set up for success.
Yeah, and I think part of the work, to address your other point, part of the work going forward is if we are able to embed this in the classrooms and the schools that the students are in, then that's exactly what we would be doing. Is we'd be asking for teachers to undergo some of the PD and the training around the concepts so that they're embedding into their whole class, and then that's then used to be able to support the student in their classroom, and then everybody's aware of the concepts, so the student does feel more included, and everybody's able to use, because frankly everybody could use a little bit of work on their social thinking at any time. So none of the concepts that are in there are bad concepts for the entire class to be using. So then you're right. In that case, it would make each of the classrooms more supportive of the student instead of always just working on the student. So yes, I think that's a great point.
Great. Thank you both.
Thank you. Kathy?
Hi, good evening. Regarding the structured learning class, because I know a few of friends of mine, the kids were in that class, and they really struggled going back into mainstream, I guess, because it closed on them in either March or April, this particular this class. And I know one is still really struggling. Is for the kids that in their class, is there any support that they can find? Because I don't think they were ready to go back to mainstream. So I know you had one part of the slide was a parent's concern, and I know they were trying to see if they could go till June, I guess, fortunately, because you said there was no funding and stuff in the program. That's why I got closed early. I'm trying to help them get answers and stuff like that so that they can better support their child even going forward this year, because they're still really struggling in mainstream.
Thanks, Kathy. And maybe you could send me a message outside of the meeting, and we can work directly with the family and the school on that particular case.
I guess the other thing I would say is for all of our students who are neurodivergent, it's not something that is going to ever just be fixed, right? So all the students, we're going to continue to help them become better relevant to themselves. And I think, again, back to the previous questioner's point, is to try to help the system better understand the needs of our students with autism and how best to support them. And that will also help them in their return back to the classroom. So again, they do need those chances to really practice those in context and with their peers. And so sometimes perpetuating a self-contained program, while it does provide a bit of that sense of security, doesn't give them those genuine opportunities to practice. And I think, again, if we can continue to meet the needs of our students within their home schools and give the staff the training and the tools that they need to better support our students, then that will also help them as they continue to either be in their schools in the first place or as they're returning.
Okay, Kate.
We've sort of touched on what I wanted to talk about, which was really where are the opportunities to educate the students who are neurotypical about the thinking of the students who are neurodivergent. So we addressed that, yes, you're going back and training some of the staff on the program and the language and so on, but it's a two-way street. We're trying to train the neurodivergent on how neurotypical folks think. Where's the opportunity to do the opposite? Because neurodivergent folks are everywhere, and there has to be some responsibility for the neurotypical in our society to have some ability to realize that not everyone thinks the way that they do. And so, yes, there's this program, and it's great to have it for all the kids, but is there an opportunity there to talk to the students and make them recognize or help them to recognize the thinking patterns of the different thinkers in their classroom, which makes it easier for them to cope. Little kids don't understand why one of their peers is not behaving, and they will just want to not deal with it, right? But if they can be given the understanding of why that behavior is happening and how they can respond, that benefits both sides, right? So I would love to see, if you're bringing this into the classroom, where are the chances to go both directions? Because I do think that benefits everyone in the classroom. It's not just about making sure everyone understands how neurotypical people think.
No, absolutely. And certainly I would say, and certainly for Audrey as well, it's a passion of ours to try to work on equity for all kids. And some of that is about neurodiversity acceptance, right? And I think that the more that we work on understanding a variety of profiles, again, of our learners and accepting what they need as well, not just always changing them, but finding opportunities to make it so that the situations work also for other people instead of always having to change the person themselves. So you're right. I think the more training we can do about the profiles of all of our students and help other people understand them. And some of the other, it's not specifically a program about this, but one of the other programs we use on our board to support students with autism is one where we actually talk to the peers about what do students with autism need and how can they support them. So then it's not about changing the student with autism, it's about changing the acceptance of the kids in the classroom and understanding the kids in the their neurodivergent peer so that they're better able to include that student, and then it's better for everybody's mental health really, and to accept that way. So the work is definitely ongoing. There's still work to do, but that certainly is part of the approach that we want to take.
Any other questions or comments for Christine and Audrey? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now at item 3.0, the SEAC discussion and question period. So if anyone has a question or a topic that they'd like to raise, please raise your hand either in person or through the hand function in the Google Meet. We're just warming up. It's just our first meeting. Okay, we'll go on to item 4.0, communications to SEAC, and starting with the superintendent's report. So first I'd like to say a warm welcome to Conan Spruan, the principal of Special Education Services. I did introduce him to the group in June, but this is his first official SEAC in the role, first of many to come. So thank you for being here, Conan, and he's off and running in very short time. The school year is off to a great start. We are granted only in week 2, but it's like starting up a big machine, right? Getting back into routines, both at home and in school. And so our staff have been really working the last week on building those warm, welcoming, inclusive environments. That is the message from our equity team, our safe and inclusive schools, our special education department. We work together to really communicate to staff that this initial time is to build those safe and inclusive environments for students so that they can learn and feel a part of the school and part of the community. We are not in too bad of a position with our transportation as in compared to past years. We have most of our routes covered by drivers, and so kids are getting to school in large part on time and to home on time, with of course the exception of the usual startup of end of day. If anyone's been at a school at the end of day, it's utter chaos in the first couple of weeks until everyone finds the regular bus line and finds their way home. So all of those pieces are underway. As in every fall, we'll be looking at our class sizes and determining whether there's a reorganization needed to meet the primary class size mandate, as well as the junior intermediate division average mandate. And then again, in special education, we do the same with our self-contained classes. So we need to be compliant with Reg 298 and the class sizes that are detailed in that regulation. So we'll be reviewing our class sizes and, if need be, reorganizing to make sure we're compliant with that. So all of that will unfold in the next few weeks. We had a busy summer with summer learning and support. We offered a number of programs in special education, particularly to support students with autism. There is a special funding source for summer programs for students with autism. But we also supported students with special education needs through Gary Allen Summer School and the school programs offerings around literacy and numeracy. We also hosted assistive technology camps for students who use assistive tech. We ran structured reading intensive support programs and an entry to school program. The Student Wellbeing Department also hosted a number of mental health supports for students over the summer using their CYCs and social workers. And our SLPs and psychoeducational consultants conducted a number of assessments over the summer to continue to reduce the wait time for assessments during the school year. And lastly, the new language curriculum was released in the last month of school last year. And we have an interdepartmental team comprised of equity, Indigenous rights and education, special education, and of course, school programs. And we're working on a rollout plan and resources to align with that curriculum. So hopefully we'll have more to share over the course of the year on that work. I'm happy to take any questions. Okay, seeing none. Oh, I spoke too soon. Sophia.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back, Colette. It's so lovely to see you. I just wanted to share some feedback about the summer learning program. As many of you know, like for a couple of years, I've been trying to get my son into the assistive tech camp in the summer. So our kids in particular, kids with Down syndrome and learning disabilities and many other learning profiles have severe learning loss over the summer, and often it's hard to find a program. So assistive tech, we were very, very excited about. We got in. We went to 2 sessions. The staff was amazing and the content was amazing, but it just really was not accessible for our learners. And I had encouraged some other families in our association also to join because I was very excited about it. Our kids all have SIA claims and technology that really, they really need support in learning how to use some of that. So I guess my concern was, like, again, it wasn't accessible. So my son went for 1 class and the other family also went for 1 or 2 classes, and then we had to drop out because it wasn't beneficial. Like the online learning is really not ideal for our learner profiles, and I think for a lot of kids with special education needs. So that's something I'd love for us to sort of reevaluate for next summer. And also, like I've shared in the past too, I think lack of communication. Like I hear, like it sounds amazing that there were programs offered at Gary Allen and structured reading intensive. I didn't hear about any of these programs. So I'm not sure how it's advertised or where it's advertised or how registration happens, but I've shared these concerns in the past too, that there's amazing, we come to SEAC, we learn about the amazing programs, and I think the intent is there, but the impact is not always happening the way it should. I don't think families hear about these programs. So I really would like to advocate that summer learning loss is huge for our families. And so if we can make these programs more accessible to our learner profiles, then it would truly benefit the kids who need it most.
Thanks so much, Sophia. We've noted that feedback, and if we're looking at offering programming next summer, if the funding comes through, then we'll certainly kind of use that feedback to design our programs and the communication approach.
That'd be wonderful, and maybe perhaps in May we can sort of bring this issue up again, just so it doesn't get lost.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or comments? Okay, at this time I'll turn it over to association reports. So feel free to kind of, again, put your hand up if you have a report to share. Aaron, I'm like, is that Aaron? I don't, we've never been in the same room.
That's right.
Only in the virtual meet. So nice to meet you in person.
I didn't know how he knew my name. Yes, it's me. So the report from Voice is more of a shameless plug for our upcoming conference, because the Voice has held annual conferences that have been very popular with professionals and parents of children who are deaf and hard of hearing for probably a decade or more. In fact, I'll probably get it's probably much more than a decade, because I know Voice has been around since the 60s. So But we're really excited to announce that we're having our first in-person conference again, and it's going to be a month from now, on October 13th and the 14th at the Sheridan Conference Center, the Trafalgar campus in Oakville. So we are at Voice, we're like so fortunate to have one of, I'd say, the world's preeminent auditory verbal therapists on our board, and she has curated an amazing agenda that, I mean, I was just like, wow, I was looking at it today thinking, I'm so excited to go and take in some of this learning. The conference has always been geared towards both professionals and parents, professionals, people that are working with children who are deaf and hard of hearing, and the parents of the children. Typically, the Friday session is geared more towards professionals, given that it's a work day, and then the Saturday is more for families. And so, you know, hopefully people can have the day off to come and do some learning. But it's not, you know, there's no like dividing line, so anyone can attend either or both days. And the agenda and the timing of everyone has finally been finalized, and I'm going to be posting it and circulating it, posting it on our website tomorrow, and it'll be circulated. So if anyone has an interest in learning about latest trends and research in helping children who are deaf and hard of hearing achieve their full potential, come out and spend a couple of days with us in October. Thank you.
Wonderful. And if you want to share that with Marta, we'd be happy to share that with SEAC and with our staff through our weekly bulletin. Absolutely.
I will. Thank you.
Kathy.
To go along with what Aaron said, when for the conferences, it's a great time for, like, say, new families coming out or just finding out that their child has hearing loss to meet other families, especially families who've been in that journey a lot longer. It helped me in the beginning. So I think it would be great, you know, if we can really push for new families whose children have been diagnosed with the hearing loss. It'd be great.
Yes, thank you. We'll try to get the word out through our instructional program leaders that work with our students who are hard of hearing. So absolutely. Any other association reports?
We are privileged to have our new ABC Halton president here with us this evening, Daniela. So I will be meeting with her soon to sort of put things together for SEAC to go over the current state of affairs. So welcome, Daniela, and yeah, we'll be in touch soon. Thanks.
Sophia.
Just a quick question. I know last year we talked about SEAC representation on some of the committees, and I think the board was to get back to us about meeting times and dates, and we never really did hear about that. So, for instance, the Equity Inclusive Steering Committee, I'd be happy to join that, but I think nobody got back to me about the time, like when they meet. Last we discussed, they hadn't decided yet, and so that kind of was, I think it was unresolved. Do we have a time that they meet?
That's a good question. I'm happy to reach out to the superintendent who facilitates that group and find out if they have scheduled meetings for the year.
Okay, perfect. If you could please let me know, that would be great. Because I think it's nice to have SEAC representation in all the steering committees, and it doesn't always work if they're in the daytime, but I'd like to give it a shot and see if we can try and make it work.
Absolutely.
I suspect that's the case for everyone. I through persistence and nagging got into a meeting in June for the mental health, the student mental health and well-being committee, but I don't have any information for this year. So maybe that all of those committees need to be notified to remind them to bring us into the loop. Thank you.
Much like the kids learning the routines at the beginning of the year, we are slowly starting up the big machine too. So yes, absolutely. We'll reach out to those superintendents.
Thank you, Colette. Yeah, please push for that, because I feel like, we ask at SEAC and then a month goes by and then we don't follow. Like, I think I brought this up, I think in April of last year. And, we're back into September of a new year now. So, time is so precious, right? So if we could please get on that, perhaps by next month, have some dates for us, that'd be awesome.
Yep, and if we find out information before next month, because we wouldn't want someone to miss a meeting if one happens in the interim, we'll send it out over email. Yeah.
Even better. Thank you.
Okay, any other association? Oh, Mel, I see you there, sorry.
Oh, yes, because I was appointed to sit on the Indigenous Committee, and I had not, unfortunately, received anything back about when they met or anything. So I was hoping that, yes, if that could get pushed as well, so that I'm able to attend to bring back any information from them.
Absolutely. Okay, so seeing no other committee reports, are there any other, let me just check our questions to see. No, there are no questions in the form. For next month, is there an association that would like to present? I understand you want to wait till November. Yep, November. Okay. So ideally we have an association present each month, so that we're learning from you as much as I hope you are learning from us, and that your presentation can inform our work. So if there is an association that would like to present, and I see Sophia has her hand up.
Sorry, I'm just going to backpedal. I do have one question. I was going to leave till next month, but you know what? Let's get right into it. My question was about the Right to Read report that was released by the ministry. So I know, like in some other boards, we are doing a lot of direct instruction with literacy. I imagine Halton's doing the same. I guess my question was around supports in contained programs. I really think we need to push to have some of those teachers trained and just to get some resources in. I did work with an elementary principal last year, and he really wanted some funding or some supports, and we spent about 6 months waiting for those books to come in. So teacher was trained, but books were ordered, we were waiting. So again, like our kids' time in school is so precious, and I can't advocate enough that like the years go by and we don't get the resources or the training or the programs that we need. And, again, time is of the essence, right? So if the Right to Read, what is the status for the Right to Read report and training, I guess, direct literacy instruction? Is there any guidance around how that's going to look like in contained programs?
So a great question. No, just a small question to end the night.
Sorry, I know. You know what? Again, time is of the essence. I don't want to wait till next month. That's a 1 month race.
No, not at all.
It's a big one. It's a loaded one, but a very, very important one.
Yeah, no, it is very important. And so I'll maybe, I'm not sure, Sophie, if you were in our last meeting in June, but Sean Marks, the outgoing principal of special education, presented to SEAC all of the work that we have done over the course of the last couple of years, and more intensively last year, related to structured reading, and that we have trained almost every cert in our system, elementary and secondary. We have provided the structured reading resources on all of those schools where staff are trained, and we have a plan to train the remaining 30 certs, I believe it is, this October. All of our self-contained teachers, LD and behavior resource classes, are also trained in using structured reading, or the Wilson resource. And Christine, who presented this evening, is working on what that would look like in a life skills class. So how to teach structured reading to our students in life skills and CPP. So we have done an immense amount of work. We have a team of structured reading IRTs that go out and support schools embedding this into their Tier 3 support. And then I referenced just in the superintendent report the work of the interdepartmental team in rolling out the new curriculum, and certainly a big piece of that new curriculum is the structured reading approach. And so we are working on a plan to get it into every single classroom, K-2, and the resources to go with that. So lots to come on that. But certainly from our self-contained perspective, the work is really well underway.
Amazing. Yeah. Because I do feel like those are the kids that, again, like they need the most support, but they're often overlooked. And particularly in CPP, I've been in touch with some principals who are saying, well, we haven't really had any IPLs come in, or we don't have the support, or we don't have the resources. So I just want to advocate that if a school wants to tap into some of those resources, can they get in touch with their IPL? Are there sort of like specialized teachers that can go in and support the literacy teachers in the CPP programs with this?
Yes, absolutely. So they can reach out to their special education IPL as a starting point, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. Great question. And now for the trustee report. I apologize. I missed that in my in my script.
That's okay. There's not a lot to share this evening. We had our first regularly scheduled board meeting last week. So we are back at our regular meeting schedule. I think on behalf of all trustees, all I would have to say today is a big thank you to all the staff throughout the board who have made the start of school a very successful endeavor and given a huge warm welcome to all the students and parents and families who are returning for what we think will be a fantastic school year. So thank you very much. We'll have more to update next meeting. Unless Trustee Ahmed has anything he'd like to add, I think that's it from the trustees for this evening anyway.
Thanks, Carol. You covered everything. Trustee Baxter, sorry. You covered everything, and that's all of it for now. We'll share more when we have some.
Okay, thank you very much. And item 4.4, committee reports. Based on that feedback, I don't imagine anybody has a committee report, but I'm happy to open it up.
I went to a meeting at the beginning of June, which was the final student health and well-being, mental health and well-being committee meeting of that year. I was really interested in how student focused it was. So I'm afraid I don't recall the name of the social worker who's running the meeting, but she absolutely directed everything to the student participants on the committee and had their voice and their feedback front and center through the whole thing, getting their feedback, getting their input and their voice about what was happening in their schools. For the primary grades, there were teacher representatives, but they again were bringing forward a very student-focused, student-led program for the mental health and well-being work in the schools. So I found that really interesting how student-first that approach was, which was not what I was expecting at all. So that was really interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that unfolds this year.
Thank you for that. Any other committee reports? Okay, so we look forward to updates over the course of the year, and we will work on getting you the dates as soon as possible, but no later than our October meeting. So item 5.0, the next agenda, just planting the seed. If anybody is interested in doing an association report, please reach out to Marta. And if October's too soon, but another month is better, then we're happy to kind of slate you in. So just let us know and we'll put you in. Aaron.
I'll do it.
October?
Yep.
Awesome.
3 short weeks away. I just saw that. So we'll strike while the iron's hot.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks, Aaron. We look forward to that.
I was thinking, Aaron, like we should do one for voice, introducing voice and stuff.
Yep, you're committed. I just committed you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you, Aaron.
All right, and that takes us to the end of our agenda, and so I will call the meeting to a close. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, everyone online.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you.